Recording. Okay. Om yo brahmanam vidadhati purvam yo vai vedamscha prahinoti tasmai tamhadevam atmabuddhi prakasham mumukshurvai sharanamaham prapadye asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Gurave Sarvalokanam, Bhishaje Bhavaroginam, Nidhaye Sarvavidyanam, Sri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. Okay. So we've had 3 sessions so far. This is the 4th session. And we've covered a lot of ground in these earlier 3 sessions. And hopefully we'll cover some more significant ground today also. So before I get started for today, are there any questions from anyone? Maybe you had not attended 1 or 2 sessions in between. You probably caught up with the recording. Maybe you didn't understand 1 or 2 things here or there. Anybody has any questions that needs to be cleared? No one? Yeah, Shvetambari ji.
Yes, I wanted to ask. Last time you spoke about reflected consciousness.
Yeah.
You said it is reflected consciousness has causal body, subtle body, and gross body.
No, 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 no. Wait, wait, wait,
No,
wait,
no. Okay,
wait, wait.
okay.
See,
Mhm.
reflected consciousness doesn't, that's not the way to put it. Okay.
Okay.
So you have a reflected consciousness associated with the causal body.
Mhm.
You have a reflected consciousness uh, that comes from the causal body and pervades the subtle body.
Okay.
And the same reflected consciousness then pervades the gross body. Okay, so
Oh.
it is one reflected consciousness,
Hmm.
which the causal body or the sattva guna of the causal body, or
Hmm.
the retracted, or how do you say, contracted mind which goes into the causal body. You can use all these expressions, which is
Mhm.
the main source of the reflected consciousness that
Oh.
pervades
Mhm.
the subtle body, Sukshma Shariram, which
Mhm.
in the waking state that expands to pervade the gross body.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay, so we will deal with this reflected consciousness in a lot more detail going forward. But basically, I introduced the topic for you to understand that we are now dealing with the two versions of this consciousness. There is one original version, and then there is a reflected version.
Yes, that was my next question. What exactly is that? How is it so different from only consciousness? What we saw in the day two, the
Yeah,
5 cardinal elements about consciousness.
yeah. Okay, so all those 5 cardinal elements of consciousness that we dictated and took notes on the
Hmm.
first day,
Hmm.
all of them belong to the original consciousness.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, they are
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
attributes or descriptions of the original consciousness.
Hmm.
And we will deal in quite a bit of detail about the similarities and differences between the original and the reflected.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So, in fact, today I plan to do that to some extent. I probably may not cover everything, but I plan to do some of that today. So you may probably wait for us to go through that, and then you can ask questions further.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, right. Anyone else? Okay, right. So, so we started with um, the very first session we talked about what this body is all about. We talked about the 5 layers or the 5 koshas, and then we compressed it to 3 shariras, and then we talked about consciousness, and then in one of the earlier classes we talked about how the consciousness interact with matter. In between we also talked about the panchabhutas and the 3 gunas, sattva rajas tamo guna, and the relationship between the panchabhutas and the indriyas and all that. Okay, so all that is behind us. And in the last class we introduced the idea about this reflected consciousness, and in between we also talked about how the individual or the microcosm and the greater world outside, called the macrocosm, how they have a lot of parallel in terms of the structure and so on. Okay, so we have the sthula shariram, sukshma shariram, and karana shariram for the individual, and we have the sthula prapancha, sukshma prapancha, and karana prapancha for the cosmic or universe. Okay, now I want to yesterday in the last class we also talked about karma. Okay, now I want to add one more point about karma, the concept of karma, before we move on to the next topic. So very often when we talk about karma, people somehow misunderstand that to be some kind of a fate. That everything is predetermined and it's all my karma and all that. Okay, that's really not how it is. See, if you talk about everything being predetermined and everything being fate, that kind of rules out any free will. That rules out any role for any free will. Whereas in our Shastras, we do have a free will. That is why the Shastras also talk about what is called Purushartha. I will talk more about Purushartha after a few minutes, but I want to finish this karma, fate, and free will kind of interplay before we move on to that Purushartha topic. So, um, karma, I said, creates a chain of consequences or chain of outcomes which come back to the doer, and the doer has to, experience all those karma phalam or the fruits of those actions. Okay, and so how karma works is the karma decides the circumstances in which the individual finds himself at any given point of time. Okay, please understand this sentence clearly. It's probably a very long formulated sentence. Karma determines the situation or the combination of circumstances in which the individual jiva finds himself at any given point of time. So the result or the consequence of karma is not something that happens at some one point of time. It's something that keeps following you continuously, and all the circumstances that are created for you are all a cumulative effect of all the past actions. It is governed by prarabdha and also your past actions in the current janma. That is the circumstances under which you find yourself. But having come to a particular situation or a particular circumstance, you are faced with one or two or more options on how to proceed and how to act. Okay, and free will is exercised on that aspect, while free will has been exercised in past karmas which go to determine your present circumstances. In the present circumstance, you exercise your free will to decide on the action that you take in this present moment. Okay, and that is how both karma and free will both interplay and both combine to take the jiva forward. Okay. So if there are any questions, I'll take it now, because this is probably something which doesn't it's not probably comprehensible in one go. I'll also give an example, but I just want, yeah, Deepti ji.
Namaste.
Namaste.
I had one question. Like it's, I have also read somewhere which it says that Naham karta, Hari karta hi kevalam. So how do see past actions determine the present is true, but also I want to know, when we say that everything is left on the God and He decides everything for us. So how does these things be compared, and can you just explain me the what is the gap that I am missing to understand?
Yeah, see, this Naham karta, Hari karta, is something that is given as a temporary answer. Really speaking, that's not the ultimate answer, because if Hari is a karta, then Hari must be the bhokta. Okay, because according to the law of karma, the doer has to experience, enjoy, and suffer the consequences of the action. Okay, so if Hari is a karta, then the jiva does not need shastras, because the jiva is just a tool. Okay, let me give you an example. Somebody kills another person using a gun. Okay, do you punish the gun or do you punish the guy who used the gun?
The guy who used the gun.
Yeah. So if Hari is a karta, what are you? What is your role? Your role is just a tool. So if Hari is a karta and you go through all the sufferings, is that not injustice?
True.
Yeah. So this whole thing about Naham karta, Hari eva karta is given to maybe provide a palliative, I would say, at one level, to reduce your suffering if you are suffering a lot, or to develop a certain attitude in you that depending on God is the best way to go forward. Okay, we will talk about it maybe after we have discussed the role of the jiva and what is exactly jiva and all that. You please park this question for the time when we discuss those relevant topics. Okay, for now I can only give you a partial answer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I'll wait.
Okay, right. So you can please lower your hand.
Yeah.
Okay, so where was I? So this interplay between karma and free will, I'll give you a very small day-to-day example, then you will understand. Yeah, we all undertake travel, and I'm sure a lot of you do travel by train. And nowadays you have a lot of disruptions in trains, and the trains don't come on time. There is a delay and all that. So uh, let's imagine somebody is traveling from place A to place B, and he has planned to take a train at 8 o'clock in the morning. Okay, now he reaches the station well in time for the 8 o'clock train, but then he sees that the 8 o'clock train is delayed by 2 hours. Okay, and there is another train starting in 15 minutes, which is going through a longer route but will take him to the same destination. Yeah, so let's imagine there are two routes, two different trains, and one train is what he has booked for 8 o'clock, and 8:15 there is a train that is going a longer route, and maybe he'll reach the destination 30 minutes later than what he planned. I don't know. Then he has a choice now to either wait for the delayed train which should leave at 8 o'clock, or take the train which goes at 8:15 but will take a longer route and go later than his planned time. Okay, until he decides to board the train and the train leaves, or until he decides not to board the train and the other train leaves, he has the choice. His free will can be exercised up to that point. Okay, but once he decides one way or the other, let's say option A, he decides to board that 8:15 train and the doors close and the train begins. At that point, he does not have the free will any longer to decide whether to board the train or not, because that decision has been made and there is no way he can go back because the train has started. Or option B, he decides not to take the train and the train leaves at 8:15 and then suddenly he wants to reverse his decision and take the train. That's not possible. So the free will can kick in up to a point where the circumstances are still offering you that choice. So in this case, the choice is, do I board the train at 8:15 or not? That is the choice. You can exercise your free will and decide to either take the train or decide not to take the train. Okay, so the fate played the role of delaying the 8 o'clock train and making a train available at 8:15. That is the role of fate. That is the consequence of all cumulative actions, not just your action. It's the cumulative action of so many other people. Yeah. But once the 8:15 train leaves, you don't have the option. The free will cannot be exercised when it comes to boarding that train. You have the free will for doing some other action. So this is a very dynamic scenario where fate and free will interact on a continuous basis. Okay, I hope this example was clear to understand and helped you to understand how fate and free will, operate together. Is that okay?
Sir, you mean that delay of the train is because of karma, and then your free will determines what you'll do next?
Yeah, I mean, it is not necessarily your karma alone. In all these cases, it is a karma of so many people that come together to create a particular situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so in Bhagavad Gita, there is a shloka in the 8th chapter which says that this creation that we all live in, is the result of our own karma. Okay, I have to look into the Bhagavad Gita text to tell you what exactly that shloka is. It's in the 8th chapter. It's the 3rd or 4th shloka. Okay, Aksharam Brahma Paramam. Yeah, the 3rd shloka, 2nd line. Bhuta bhavod karo visargah karma sangitah. That is a line. Okay. Now, if somebody is going to study the 8th chapter in detail, then they'll understand what exactly is that concept. But Bhagavan in Bhagavad Gita 8th chapter says that this creation, this whole universe, not just your private creation, but this whole universe is the result of the combined karma of so many millions of people. So we all come together to create this universe with our karma. We all have a contribution, and so when the train gets delayed, it is the karma of somebody else, who caused the delay. But you are suffering the consequences of that person's karma because you have some kind of connection somewhere in the past that is not evident, that is not available to your knowledge, but it comes to you as a consequence. Okay.
Understood.
Right. So now we will go to another topic which is called Purushartha. So Purushartha basically means the purpose towards which an individual can work. Okay. So very often we have this question, what is the purpose of life? Yeah. So that purpose of life, our ancestors, our ancient rishis have broken down into 4 major purposes of life. They are called dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. We use that phrase. It consists of artha, kama, dharma, moksha, but we generally use it in the combination of dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Okay. Now, artha means material comforts and material possessions and material achievements. Okay, that means anything that that has to do with the money, property, relationships, position, all those things. What we call worldly achievements. What we normally call as worldly achievement, that is denoted by the word artha. Artha literally means money. Okay, Artha Shastra, Chanakya wrote Artha Shastra. So the Artha means literally wealth, money, possession, all that. Then Kama. The second Purushartha is Kama. Kama essentially boils down to sense pleasure. We have, in the very first class, we talked about 5 sense organs and 5 organs of action. So all these 10, when we use towards enjoyment, that is Kama. So it will include things like, eating tasty food, or enjoying some good drinks, and living a comfortable life in an AC room or in a cool climate, having posh cars, and having a huge villa, and listening to good music, watching a lot of dance or Netflix movies or whatever. So whatever form of entertainment, we bring all forms of entertainment in this Kama. Okay, now if you observe the world around us very carefully, you would see that almost 90-95%, even 99% of the people are pursuing artha and kama. Okay, that is the current trend. Make a lot of money, party hard, work hard, and weekends must be for enjoyment, and weekdays are for hard work. That's the philosophy with which most of the world is moving. Okay, which is okay, as long as it gives the person whatever he is looking for. It's not bad to pursue artha and kama, but then the shastras warn us that if you are too much into the pursuit of artha and kama, then in the long run, when we say in the long run, it is not just for one janma. We talk about eternity of janmas, an unending sequence of janma. So in the next janma and the janma after that, you may not be so fortunate to have the same kind of enjoying life throughout. Okay, so the shastras say that the artha and kama have to be moderated by following dharma, and the dharma aspect is equally important in this janma also, because if one is too much addicted to money and enjoyment, then it can come to a point where you start creating trouble for others, and you may even start harming others. Because if you see today, a lot of people are so greedy that in their pursuit of money and power, they create a lot of law and order problems, or they break a lot of laws, and they could get into legal trouble because of their pursuit of money and so on. For instance, corruption. Yeah, what is corruption? Corruption is basically pursuit of money and power without recourse to dharma. Okay, so dharma is a third purushartha. And what is dharma? Dharma basically means that you follow a certain code of conduct where there are clear do's and don'ts, and by following these do's and don'ts, you are able to enjoy artha and kama in a moderate way, while making sure that you don't harm others, you don't cause distress to others, and at the same time you don't become too addicted to any of the artha kama pursuits, and you also make sure that your future janmas are taken care of. So in dharma, the concept of earning some punyam for the next janma comes into play. In the artha kama plane, the person is not bothered about the next janma. The moment the person starts bothering about the next janma, he starts thinking about dharma, and then he starts talking about, okay, what should I avoid, what should I follow, and there's a very elaborate code of do's and don'ts, which we call dharma shastra, I am not going to talk here much about Dharma Shastra because it's a very vast subject by itself. But basically, what we call a disciplined and a moderated and controlled life, which we in the Hindu society we are all taught from childhood. Things like be honest, tell the truth, and satyam vada, dharmam chara. All those things are there. So there are a lot of qualities which even the Shastras say that you should develop, and the developing of those qualities will necessarily require you to follow Dharma Shastra. Okay, so in the PDF that I shared, you will find a section called Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti. Sadhana Chatushtaya Sampatti is a term that we use for denoting four broad categories of qualities. Okay, there are four qualities which are then broken down further into another 6 plus 3 9 qualities totally. Yeah, so Viveka, Vairagya, then Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti, and Mumukshutvam. These are the four broad qualities, and under Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti there are 6 qualities. That is Shama, Dama, Uparama, Titiksha, Shraddha, Samadhanam. There are 6 qualities. So 6 plus 3, 9 qualities. So this is a broad definition. And then if you go to Bhagavad Gita, there are different places, different chapters where Bhagavan talks about. In the 13th chapter, there is a list of 20 qualities which he describes in the name of Jnanam. And then in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there is a description of some 27 qualities, which comes under Daivi Sampat. And then again in the 6th chapter, when Krishna talks about Ashtanga Yoga, there is a description, or not exactly in Bhagavad Gita, but in the Bhashyam for the 6th chapter, Shankaracharya talks about Ashtanga Yoga, Shama, Dama, and all that. So Shama consists of, sorry, not Shama, Dama, I'm sorry, Yama, Niyama. So Yama consists of 5 qualities, Niyama comes with 5 qualities. So Yama, Niyama together is 10 qualities. So if you go to the Shastras, even if you go to Bhagavad Gita or Upanishad, all these qualities are mentioned, and one should develop these qualities. And to develop these 27 or 20 or whatever qualities, you have to necessarily follow dharma. Okay, so dharma essentially introduces a certain moderation in the enjoyment of artha and kama, and also paves the way for more punyam, which will kind of serve as an insurance policy for your future janmas to be as good or even better than the present janma. Okay, that is dharma. But then this artha, kama, and dharma are all connected with birth and death and rebirth. Okay, by following artha, kama, dharma, you will just be moving from one janma to another. And as Mr. Sridhar pointed out in the last class, this looks like a never ending cycle of, or never ending chain of janmas. Okay, and if you are happy in every successive janma, then you probably don't bother about whether you are going to be born a million times or a billion times. You will think, okay, I'm going to be happy in every janma anyway, so why should I bother about anything else? But then there is no guarantee that in every janma you will have the exact same level of comfort, or you will enjoy a comfortable cozy life. There are a lot of pitfalls and risks, and there is no guarantee that the next janma will even be a human birth. It could be an animal birth, or it could be a human being born in a very violent society. It could be anything. Yeah, and so there is no guarantee that every janma will come with a good package. So the Shastras also talk about what is called moksha, which is a final exit from this endless chain of birth and death. and that is called moksha. Moksha means liberation. And liberation is what? Liberation is liberation from the chain of birth and death. That is moksha. Okay. Now, in the very first class, I talked about the 6 different schools of philosophy in our system and all that. So, every school of philosophy has a certain definition of moksha and certain, shall we say, guide or procedure on how one can attain moksha. Okay. So, I am not going to discuss all those different definitions of moksha, but all these schools of philosophy agree that moksha means end of the birth and death cycle, and then it is eternal. Once a person becomes liberated, mukta purusha, then there is no more birth for him in any body. Okay, that is a commonly agreed definition across all the 6 schools. Okay, and even the other 6 Nastika schools have something like that. They also talk about nirvana a lot. For instance, Buddhism talks about nirvana. Okay, they also say that you have an ultimate mukti where you are not born again. So even the Nastika systems accept this moksha definition. So this is one point where everybody agrees that there is a way to get out of this birth and death cycle, and once you get out, you will not come back into this cycle of birth and death. That is moksha, that is called mukti. Okay, so these are the 4 purusharthas. Okay, now we will see maybe in the next class how we can get into that moksha aspect. But for now, I will stop this purushartha topic and move to a slightly different topic. So before I do that, I'll give a pause, and if there is any question, we'll have a short discussion. Yeah, Sudha. Yeah.
Namaskaram, Vasuna.
Namaskaram.
So you mentioned the 4 Purusharthas, namely the Artha, Kama, Moksha, Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha. So regarding the Dharma, I was just curious, how could actually one find their own individual Dharma? Because from your speeches and also from what I understand, it's quite individual, and there is also a collective Dharma for,
Yeah,
you know,
correct,
a
correct,
group of people. Are
correct.
you going to touch on this topic, or was I too precautious in my question? I just wanted to
No,
ask
it's
that.
a very good question. It's a very good question, very relevant to the topic on hand. See, the thing is, we talk about dharma in generic terms. Really speaking, there is what is called samanya dharma, and then there is something called a vishesha dharma. There are 2 aspects of dharma. So samanya dharma is something like a common code of law which everyone has to follow, or at least which a large section of the population has to follow. Okay, again, when we say samanya dharma, the dharma shastras have a samanya dharma for every varna and every ashrama. So if I have to talk about the samanya dharma and vishesha dharma, I have to get into varnashrama topic, which I have not planned for today. Okay, but varna and ashrama basically means you have 4 aspects or 4 areas by which an individual can contribute to the society, which is called varna. So there is a brahmana varna, kshatriya varna, vaishya varna, and shudra varna. So the brahmana varna, broadly speaking, contribute to the society by intellectual contribution. Okay, in the olden days, the brahmana contribution was by studying the Veda Shastras, and then by offering guidance to the rest of the society through the help of Dharma Shastras. That was the brahmana's role. In addition, they were also taking care of performance of rituals and so on. Okay, in today's world, we could say that the intellectual professions like the teacher, the lawyer, or anybody who uses his knowledge to contribute to society in a positive way, they can all be called brahmanas in a diluted sense. Okay, it's not how the shastra define brahmana, but in today's circumstance, we can call these intellectual contributors as brahmanas. in modern day terms. Then Kshatriya is one who's supposed to protect the society from internal, internal. I would say, I'd put it this way: he's supposed to maintain a law and order within the society and protect the society from external aggression. So, in today's terms, the public servants, the administration, the army, the police, they will all come under the Kshatriya banner. And then the Vaishya is supposed to create wealth for the society. So anybody who engages in business and who does trade or who produces goods, manufacturing, they are all Vaishyas. Okay, and according to the Shastra, even the farmer is a Vaishya. The one who tills the land and produces crops and food is a Vaishya. And a Shudra is one who has not specialized in any of the other three categories. So he's basically an unskilled labor who assists the other three varnas in their respective professions. That is how the Shastras define Shudra. Okay. Now, over the centuries, over the millennia, a lot of these definitions have changed. But what I am giving you, I mean, when I say definitions have changed, the way the society defines these varnas have changed, but the Shastras have not changed. The Shastras is what I have told you is what the Shastras view. This is the Shastric view. But in today's world, if you look, what society follows is not exactly aligned to this principle. Okay, and when I come to ashrama, the ashrama system is divided into four: brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasa. So this is a system where the individual progresses from his early childhood into adulthood and into a mature old age, and at each stage how he should contribute to the society. So the ashrama dharma decides, okay, until you are 16 or 17, you are supposed to be studying and learning the shastras, acquiring education, and that is the brahmachari stage. Then the person gets married and runs a household, he produces children, and then he supports the society by whatever contribution he should be making, engage in a profession. And then at the age of 50, 55, 60, whatever, when his children have grown up and they are able to take over the responsibilities of the household, he leads a semi-retired life and focuses more on his own spiritual growth. That is vanaprastha. And finally, at some point, he completely moves out of the household and lives in the forest or lives away from the house and focuses completely entirely on his spiritual progress. That is sannyasa. Okay, this is the broad definition of the varna ashrama. So this comes to a 4x4 matrix of 16 different slots, and every slot has a samanya dharma and a vishesha dharma, which is where I was coming to. Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes, okay.
when I say samanya dharma, it is not. There are some samanya dharmas which are applicable across all the varnas and ashramas, but then there are some samanya dharmas for a specific varna and a specific ashrama. And then the Vishesha Dharma goes right up to the level of a community or a family or an individual. So there are different levels at which the Samanya and Vishesha Dharma are defined, and it is way too complex a topic that I cannot take it up for a complete discussion. I am also not very knowledgeable. Yeah, so we have some idea about what is good, what is not good, and we follow that dharma. But to give you a discourse on what exactly Dharma Shastras say, I'm probably not a competent person.
No, no, but thank you very much for the
Yeah?
insights.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So that was Purushartha and that was Varnashrama Dharma. Now we will go to another topic which is equally important for our Advaita understanding, and that is the Advaitic view of truth or Satyam. Okay, now we all have some kind of an abstract idea about truth. Okay. So typically what we say is, whatever you see is truth, because we talk about eyewitnesses in a lot of cases. Okay. Or if you hear something from somebody, and if that is corroborated by some other evidences, that is truth. Okay. So when we talk about truth, we have to deal with two different aspects. One is what is called pramanam, which is the source of the truth or source of knowledge. And then the other one is the the nuances that concern about the truth itself. Okay. So I will first deal with the second one and then come to the first one after a while. Yeah. So in Advaita, we talk about three levels of truth. We talk about three levels of truth. We have what is called transactional truth or objective truth, or in Sanskrit we call it Vyavaharika Satyam. Vyavaharika Satyam. Okay. And I would also use the word conditional truth. The transactional truth, conditional truth, objective truth, these are all at one level. Then there is a higher level of truth which is called absolute truth. That is absolute truth, or I would call it unconditional truth. And in Sanskrit it is called Paramarthika Satyam. Paramarthika Satyam. It comes from the word Paramartha. Paramartha means absolute. So when Paramartha is used in an adjectival form, it becomes Paramarthika. Satyam is truth. Okay, so there is an absolute truth. And then we have what is called an illusional truth or a subjective truth. Illusional truth or subjective truth. In Sanskrit, it is called Pratibhasika Satyam. Pratibhasika Satyam. Pratibhasika. Pratibhasika. Yeah. Pratibhasika. Pratibhasika Satyam. Okay, now I'll define all the three in a more elaborate way. I just mentioned what these three levels of truth are. I will define them. Let us first talk about the transactional truth. Okay, transactional truth is subject to a certain location in space and time. That is the broadest definition. Transactional truth is subject to a location in space and time. Okay, so the simplest example I can give is all of us, every one of us here in this call, exist on this earth from our date of birth until our date of death, whenever it is supposed to be. Yeah, I mean, all of us have a date of death. Maybe we'll live 200 years. That's a different story. But at the end of 200 or 300 years, whenever our time comes, we have to go. Okay, so everybody in this earth exists in a particular time and in a particular place. The Russians live in Russia, the Americans live in America, and we, even though we were born in India, we chose to come to Germany or someplace in Europe. So today we are in one city, maybe 10 years later we'll be in a different city, we don't know. So at any given time, our address determines our location. Okay, and our existence is between our date of birth and our date of death. That's the simplest example you can think of transactional truth. Okay, all of our existence, our transactional existence is governed by location and time. So transactional truth is that truth which is governed or bound by space and time. Okay, any questions? Is it clear? No doubts? Yeah, okay. Now we will talk about absolute truth. Okay, now this absolute truth is exactly on the other end of the transactional truth. It is not limited by space and time. Absolute truth is not limited by space and time. That means it has always been there, it is now also there, and it will ever be there in the future. And wherever you go, it will be there. Okay, in Sanskrit we say Trikale api abadhitavyam. Trikale means in the past, present, and future. And it is everywhere. Wherever you go, it will be there. That is absolute truth. Okay. And I have to clarify here, it is not that this absolute truth is existing within space and time. It's not that, there is space and time, and wherever you go within space and time, it is available. No. We invert it and say space and time exist in this absolute truth. That is the important point to understand. Space and time exist within this absolute truth called Paramarthika Satyam. Okay. And to give you an example, you can compare it to space. You can compare it to space. Now, how many of you here can offer me a definition of space? Does anybody want to try? Can anyone say what is space? Is it a positive entity? Is it absence of something? What is space? Yeah, no one? Yeah, Subhashini ma'am?
Emptiness, sir.
Emptiness. Okay, that's a very sorry.
Materialistic wise, empty. It has everything, and all the materialistic start from there, but it is still the lightest portion of that.
Okay, so the thing is, it is very difficult to define space in words, so we only give examples. Okay, so when you have a suitcase and when it is empty, you open the suitcase and say you have space here, you can put something here. Okay, or when you're looking for a home, you go to visit some apartment or house, you look at how much space is available. So you measure the space in terms of square feet area and cubic meters and all that. Okay, so you say that this room has more space, this room has less space, or this hall has more space, or this kitchen has less space. You use those kind of terms. Okay, and then you say, okay, we have space inside the house, and then we have space outside the house, we have a garden, we have space outside the house. Okay, all this is fine up to a point, but when you really think about it, it is not the room or the suitcase which has space, it is this house and the suitcase and the entire universe and planet they exist in space. Yeah. Yes, Sudha.
Anna, can we define space as an other dimension or an other element, like, say, for example, time, that all that what we all experience in this world?
See, if you talk about space as a dimension, you are going into modern science. Okay. So, in fact, in the very first class, about 4 or 5 weeks back, we had discussed about the 5 elements, and Akasha or space is the first element that is created in creation. Okay. So, we treat Akasha as an element from which Vayu comes from, and from which Agni comes, and all that. Okay. So, uh, so I am talking about how to talk about space in a way that we can understand, because space, all said and done, is abstract. Okay, that's where I am coming from. Just a minute. Yeah, Subhashini, what was your point?
I was about to say that's the Pancha Buddhas, the
Yeah,
place from where the Pancha Buddhas.
correct. Yeah. So, Sudha, to make your point, when you talk about space as a dimension, that is taking you into modern physics and relativity and all that. I'm not going there. I'm going more from a shastric perspective. So, in the Shastras, space is an element. It's one of the Pancha Bhutas. Okay. And it is space that accommodates everything in creation. Okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
exactly like how we say, even though initially we say this house has space, this hall has space, and so on, really speaking, it is not space existing inside the house, but the house itself exists inside space. So that is the way you have to understand this relationship between absolute truth and space and time.
So
So,
all encompassing would be a word. Is that right way to understand it?
yeah, approximately for the time being, you can keep it that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say this absolute truth is the container in which everything else exists, including space and time.
As an element, as one of the Panchabhutas.
Yeah,
Okay.
including space and time, everything exists within this absolute truth, Paramarthika Satyam. Okay, so
Okay.
this is a very important point which we will again revisit after we cover some more topics. But I will move to the subjective truth now and then close this session for today. We will continue this topic in the next class. Okay, so subjective truth is also called illusional truth. We give some examples for that. There is mirage water. So when you walk on the road, or when you walk in some sand, beach sand or desert sand, when the weather is very very hot, you tend to see some kind of a watery image in the distance. So you kind of get an illusion that there is a pool of water there, but when you go near, you see it is no water there, but you only have some sand. Okay. Or we give another example, which is a shell silver. So when you walk on the beach in hot sun, you have a lot of shells on the seashore, and sometimes what happens, the shells reflect the sunlight and they shine very brightly, and it gives you the illusion that there is some kind of a silver coin lying there. But when you go and pick it up, it's not silver, but it is just shell. So it is called shell silver. Okay. And the third example we give is your dream. In your dream, you see so many things. A lot of people travel by flight or go by train, and then they travel to all parts of world, in a matter of one night's dream. And during the dream, everything seems real, but once you wake up, it is a dream. So that kind of a reality that you experience, either in the mirage water scenario, or in the shell silver scenario, or in the dream scenario, or we even talk about magic show. When you go and watch a magic show, magician performing a magic trick, the most popular magic trick that you could have seen is, he invites a volunteer from the crowd, and then he places that person on a table and then cuts him into two pieces and then separates the two pieces and then walks in between and does all that. And when this person is being cut, the person even screams, and you know, all that happens. But in 5 minutes, the person who was cut into two pieces comes back to life from somewhere behind in the audience. Okay, so you don't even know how the person came from the stage to some back row in the audience. So that is magic show. And when this magic trick is being enacted, it all looks very real. Yeah, but when the person walks back, you know it was all an illusion. Okay, so that illusory experience that you have is the third level of truth. So there is a transactional truth which we all experience normally. There is an absolute truth which is useful for our philosophical discussions going forward, and then there is an illusory or subjective truth which is very specific to the individual. Because in my dream, you cannot come and see what I am seeing in my dream, and I cannot come in your dream and see what you are seeing in your dream. So your dream is exclusively your domain, and my dream is exclusively mine. And the mirage water that I may see, you may not see. You know, even though two of us may be walking together, I may see the mirage water, but you may not see it. Yeah. So this is a very subjective experience. That is what we call illusory truth or subjective truth. Okay. So please, note down these three definitions and understand exactly how these three definitions work. And we will continue the discussion in the next session next week. Yeah, Deepaji.
Sir, why do we call level of truth? Why can't we say type of truth?
I'm talking about a level of truth because I want to talk about a hierarchy. You know, when we talk about levels, we talk about a hierarchy. Okay, so the absolute truth is all said and done the most superior truth, and compared to that, the transactional truth is inferior in some sense, and the subjective truth or the illusory truth even more inferior. Okay, so when I say inferior or superior, it is, you know, in terms of what I would call utility. Okay, so this is actually a foundation for a greater discussion on what is moksha, why is moksha important, why is arthakama not so good. So these are all leading to that. So for now, you can just note it down and put a star somewhere, that even though I called it level of truth, why should it be called level of truth? Why can't we call it types of truth? It's not wrong. It's not wrong to call it a type of truth. But then when I say they are types of truth, they all become equally valuable. Whereas what I want to say is they are not equally valuable. One is more valuable than the other. And so to convey that meaning, it is easy for you only if you understand them as three levels of truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more question. What is the relation between the two aspect of truth and this level? Or you'll tell it next time.
Uh,
You mentioned initially that truth has two aspects. One is pramanam and then something else which I didn't make a note of.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then
So this is the
levels.
aspect of truth. This three levels of truth is the description of the truth itself.
Okay.
So the description of the truth itself is what I talked to you in the last 15 minutes about absolute truth, transactional truth, and subjective truth.
Okay.
And then we will talk about the pramanam, which is basically your source of knowledge or the instrument through which you gain the knowledge about the three levels of truth.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So for today, we will stop here. But if there are questions, if there are still some, question marks in your mind, something that you have not understood, you can feel free to ask. Okay. Looks like no one has any questions. Yeah. So, yeah, if no one has questions, we will chant our closing prayers and then, yeah, Subhashini ma'am.
No, sir, just a sharing maybe. If I say hierarchy, then it sticks to Advaita concept. That is one, I'm seeing one at different levels. If I say types, then it does not stick to that one God. Then I'm talking about different God, different types of God. So probably hierarchy is much more easier to stick with the
Yeah, I mean,
concept of Advaita.
I explained to Deepaji, no, that it's not
Okay.
completely wrong. It's not completely wrong to call it types of truth. But when you say types of truth, you are bringing them all into the same plane. Okay. Whereas
Mhm.
I am trying to say that implicitly there is a different value associated with each level of truth.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
to bring out that message, if I say type of truth, I am kind of putting myself in a disadvantage. Whereas if I say level of truth, I am implying that there is a different value attached to each truth. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So we will now chant the closing prayers and end the session today. Yeah. ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते सर्वेषां स्वस्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां शान्तिर्भवतु सर्वेषां पूर्णं भवतु सर्वेषां मङ्गलं भवतु सर्वेऽपि सुखिनः सन्तु सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Okay, so thank you. We will meet next Wednesday. We have a session next Wednesday, right, Mrinalini ji?
Yes, yes,
Thank you
yes.
very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you.
Good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Anna.